So why don't we dive right into it? We'll be covering what is zero trust at a high level. I'm sure the concept is probably quite familiar to a lot of you, so I won't drain that topic, but we'll just kind of overview what zero trust is. We'll go into what app governance is, why we created it, what it's all about, and then go through a scenario-based walkthrough of how app governance enables zero trust, and then how to get started. All right, so zero trust is a concept of instead of assuming everything is behind the corporate firewall is safe, it assumes every request is a potential breach. And so every request must be verified as though it originates from an open network. So regardless of where the request originates or what the resource is that it accessed, it teaches the motto of never trust, always verify, making sure that every access request is fully authenticated, authorized, and encrypted before granting access. Microsegmentation and least privileged access principles are applied to minimize lateral movement, and rich intelligence and analytics are used to detect and respond to anomalies in real time. So the underlying principles that provide the foundation of the zero trust model include things like verify explicitly, use least privileged access, assume breach, and it covers many different components, including identities, which is like user identities or app identities, devices, data, infrastructure, network, etc. And with zero trust, it includes many components, like I said, identities, endpoints, apps, etc., which maps to the Microsoft product ecosystem. And what we'll be talking about today focuses in on the top right corner, which is Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, which includes app governance, which plays in the posture management space as well as the threat protection space, and others. Let's dive into what app governance specifically is. So as you are probably already experiencing, we've been seeing that customers have accelerated their cloud adoptions, meaning that they're accumulating more cloud apps to take advantage of all these capabilities that these apps offer. But with this proliferation of apps comes risks, of course. Kind of leads us to the question of, do you know what your apps are doing when you're not looking? Apps don't always behave as you think, and sometimes even trusted apps can be compromised and change their behavior. It leads us to ask the questions, do you know exactly how many apps are deployed in your environment? Do you know what the app actually does with your data, users, and other apps once it's deployed? Do you know if the apps that are deployed are even being used? There must be a process and oversight to verify that apps continue to behave in the way they were intended when they were first introduced into your environment. And when that isn't in place, there are often consequences. As we've seen in the recent years, there's been an increase in app-based attacks. So in 2019, for example, we saw that app identities were compromised due to unsuspecting user error. This unknowingly granted wide-ranging and inappropriate access. In 2020, we saw that trusted apps with broad adoption were targeted by bad actors. When this occurs with an overprivileged app, for example, the attacker can gain inappropriate access to sensitive data, users, and services. This attack actually targeted around 25% of S500 companies, so it's something that could happen to anyone and shows the high proliferation of this attack technique. And then more recently, in January of 2022, an attacker used OAuth consent phishing to gain access to an app that allowed them to exfiltrate data. And this incident actually was detected by app governance threat detections, and these apps were quickly shut down by Microsoft. So considering the increase in app-based attacks, it's important that orgs consider using a comprehensive approach to protecting their apps. Currently, there are two groups of solutions that can be used to control and protect cloud apps. Specifically, it's solutions that control app access. So if we look at the left, Azure Active Directory is the Microsoft solution here. And then to the right, there's solutions that control app usage, with Defender for Cloud Apps being that solution. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps is our leading CASB solution, which provides security features that enable management and governance of apps utilized by your organization. It enables you to discover and manage sanctioned and unsanctioned apps, govern access to those apps and the resources that they utilize, and assess and enforce cloud app security policies and compliance requirements. And then if we go bringing us down to app behavior, app governance complements Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps as an add-on capability and offers in-depth capabilities to protect against risky app behavior for all Azure connected apps. And so it kind of brings, it's a three-pronged approach to protecting your apps. App governance is the third prong in our recommended approach and focuses on app behavior. Specifically, how do you know that the app is actually doing what you intended it to do with the data, users, and other apps it was granted access to? By clearly understanding the actual behavior of an app with data, users, and other apps, we can gain a clear picture of the risks an app poses in our environment. Here, app governance addresses three main questions admins are asking. First question being, what are all these apps doing with my data and users? Here, app governance provides deep visibility and insights into how an app is configured, including Graph API and legacy permissions. And if an app is exhibiting high-risk behavior, such as interacting with high-value users when it shouldn't be. The next question typically is, what can I do to control the behaviors of my apps with app data and users? Here, app governance provides out-of-the-box policies and the ability to proactively define policies to control how apps behave with the data and users it has access to. This ensures apps meet your organization's security and compliance posture requirements, and these alerts are aggregated into incidents and are integrated with Microsoft 365 Defender and Sentinel. Then the last question that comes up is, what if an app is not behaving as it should? What happens then? What do I do? App governance includes automated machine learning-based detection and policy-based alerts to make you aware of unusual app activity or behaviors that don't meet your predefined governance policies. Additionally, app governance also includes automated and manual remediation capabilities so that when an issue arises, it can be addressed quickly. And so tying this back to zero trust, app governance, let's walk through a scenario quickly of how app governance maps to the different pillars of zero trust and what that looks like exactly. I'll quickly run through this and then jump over to app governance itself to demo the scenario we're looking at here. So starting out, let's just say app.foo was installed in Azure AD. And when an app is installed, of course, you want to vet it and make sure, even before it's installed, and of course, also after, you want to vet it, make sure it's doing what it should be doing, and that it has good app hygiene. So app governance here provides oversight over identity access management so that you're able to get insights into high privilege and unused permissions for an app. You can see whether an app is actually using the permissions that have been assigned to the app and see the level of access that they have. And this maps to verifying explicitly as well as using least privileged access. Moving down, we see that app governance threat detections will fire an alert for app.foo's data access if app.foo's data access volumes are abnormally high. We have a comprehensive around like over 20 plus threat detections in our app governance repository that fires for all of our tenants. And so once you install app governance without even having to configure any policies or anything else, you're able to get the goodness of threat detections that run on machine learning created by our research team on commonly seen attack patterns. Moving over, oh, and that maps to assume breach. Of course, you have to proactively monitor for any abnormal activity and assume breach. Next step, admins can go to app governance to investigate a lot of granular detail about an app, such as how much data AppFu is accessing, any sensitivity labels accessed, whose data is being accessed, what permissions are being used, and more, which will I can show you in our demo shortly. And this maps to verify explicitly. And then from there, app governance also allows admins to shut down any suspicious apps that they find within their tenant while they're doing further investigation to contain any blast radius, which maps to assume breach. And then the last piece, admins can continuously monitor for suspicious activity as well as any hygiene violations to reduce an app's attack surface, which maps to use least privilege access. So with that, I'm going to, if Caroline, you could share your screen, I'm going to walk through a demo quickly.
Sounds perfect. Let me know if it's popping up for you.
Yep, I can see it. So
Awesome.
This is app governance. It shows up in the Defender portal along with all your other Defender products. And the overview page, which we're on now, brings to the forefront any risky areas you need to pay attention to and provides insights into how your tenant is doing and what the apps within your tenant are doing. So if we start at the left, you'll see here kind of mapping to the verify explicitly piece. You can see there are 15 overprivileged apps within your tenant. There's also 32 highly privileged apps, and you can click into those categories to see which of the overprivileged apps, for example, you have in your tenant and whether any of those permissions need to be removed. If we scroll down to the app categories, there are also additional categories of riskier apps that we can see here, such as unverified publisher. And then if we click on the three dots, we also have other categories like apps with app-only permissions and new apps. And then you can slice and dice your data and look at those populations of apps as well, specifically. Scrolling back up, we can also see the number of incidents within the tenant. And if we move to the right, how many predefined policies or out-of-the-box policies that we've already set up in your tenant. So trying to reduce any config and work on the customer side so that they get the goodness that we've seen at our tenants just out of the box. And then one of the features that we released recently is alerting on apps that have accessed DLP labels, as well as different Microsoft 365 services. So you can see that Exchange has been a workload that's been accessed a lot in the last 30 days. And then here we also show any sensitivity data labels accessed. Here there aren't any items, but if there were sensitivity labels accessed, they would show up there. And then visualizations on data usage across the tenant is shown broken up by workload as well as file type. All right, so before we jump into the apps list and all that stuff, let's drill into the latest incidents. So if we click on the latest incidents tab shows you the top latest 10 alerts in your tenant. And if we click on the alert from 7/6, July 6th, app made unusual access. This takes us to the Defender Alerts portal, where all of our alerts are consolidated and provides detailed information on why the alert was created and what you need to do to resolve it. Okay, so here you can see details on when the alert was fired, incident ID, things like that. Let's click into the Alerts tab at the top. And let's click into the alert itself. And here you can see information like what MITRE attack technique this, this activity mapped to. If we scroll down, we can also see detailed alert description on why the alert was generated. And then we scroll down, as well as recommended actions that you can take to remediate this threat. Like I mentioned before, you're able to disable an app directly in App Governance while you do further investigation on any suspicious activity. If we click into the app itself, Microsoft Graph PowerShell, this takes us back to the App Governance portal to see all the data and investigate further whether this app is actually malicious or not. So here we can see app metadata such as app ID, whether the publisher is verified or the app is certified. And then if we go to data usage,
Wendy, before we get there, could you kind of share a bit more on what this publisher verified piece means?
yeah, sure. So Microsoft has a publisher verification program where app publishers can get a verification status, which provides kind of like a blue check, which means that they're publisher verified, that provides certainty to customers that this publisher is not just some random publisher that's publishing apps that haven't been vetted in any way, but this publisher satisfies certain security and compliance requirements that Microsoft has laid out and is a trustable publisher.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So maybe we can go to an app that has data usage in the tenant. So, so here you can see that apps list has different ways that you can slice and dice your data. It shows all of the Microsoft 365 connected, Azure connected apps within your tenant. And then provides data at a glance of when apps were last modified, whether they have delegated or app level permissions, whether the app is enabled or whether it's been disabled by Microsoft, other information like that. And if we scroll to the right, it also shows data usage. So if we filter by data usage, if we click on the, not filter, but sort by data usage, why don't we click into the first app, See Attack. And if we go to the data usage tab, we can see that this app has continuously been accessing data over the last 30 days, which seems fairly routine. But if we look at the data trend of the last 30 days versus the previous 30 days, we can see that data usage has jumped 20% the last month versus the previous month, which could be reason for alarm. Let's dig deeper. If we scroll down, we see that majority of the data accessed has been email data in exchange. So we see that quite a bit of emails have been sent and read. So again, let's dig a little deeper. If we go to the Users tab, let's see whose data is being accessed. We scroll down, we see that these users, Jackson Hall, Martin, Kenyatta, and the ones below are the users whose data is being accessed, and we can actually see that Joanne is a priority user. Priority users being folks like CEOs, CFOs, managers who have access to a lot of confidential data or just a lot of data in general. And so we see that a lot of data is being accessed for Joanne, which, you know, that should not be the case. Apps should not be accessing such large amounts of priority account data. If we scroll up, we can dig actually even deeper. So if we go to permissions, we can see that files.readwrite.all, which is a high privilege permission, is being used to access data, as well as mail.readbasic and others. So based on the information that we're seeing here, we can see that based on the priority account data being accessed, the increase in data usage over the last 30 days, and the use of high privilege permissions to access this data, it seems like this app could be malicious, and we can actually shut this app down in app governance while we do further investigation, or just permanently. I think so. Actually, there would normally be a disable button at the bottom. I think we're in a reader role, so global admins and other types of admin roles can disable the app here itself. All right. So one other thing I wanted to call out in this demo is if we go to the Policies tab in App Governance. This is where we can create proactive policies on any one of the over 20 policy conditions that App Governance offers. But we can also see a list, if we scroll down, of the predefined policies that come out of the box for App Governance. And these are also based on machine learning and are actually calibrated to your specific tenant's data to determine the thresholds that these policies are set on. All right, let's go to create new policy. And let's create a custom policy so that we can take a look at the policy conditions offered. Yep, let's go to the next. Let's just choose a severity. Go next. Yeah, let's customize the policy. You can have it apply to all apps or specific apps or even an exclusion list of apps. Let's have it apply to all apps just for now. And then let's edit the conditions. If we add a condition, we can see a full list of the over 20 policy conditions. You can create a policy on things like the specific names of consenting users. If any specific users within your tenant provide consent to an app, fire an alert. You can also create a policy on specific app level permissions. So app level permissions are provide a lot of access for apps. Apps can access data even without authenticating through a user. And so app level permissions is something we've seen customers very interested to monitor of if a specific app level permission is being used, then fire an alert. So let's click into that one, app permissions. And then if we click into the field, we can see a whole list of the permissions offered within your tenant. So we could set an alert on, I believe if we type files into the field, If we click read and write files in all site collections, this would alert on if that high privilege permission that CAttack app had was used. And if we add another condition, we can also combine use of this permission with the data usage condition. And we can say if the read and write files in all site collections permission is used and over 2 GB of data is accessed, then fire an alert. All right, so why don't we'll just go with that. Let's save that. And then we can have the policy automatically disable an app if an alert is fired. If an app shouldn't be using that specific permission at all, for example. So let's click that. And then you can also choose the way that the policy operates, whether it should just generate alerts or whether it should take the remediation action specified. Let's have it in auto mode for now. Right, so then you can submit the policy in your tenant, and it will start generating alerts for the conditions that you set. There we go. All right, so with that, I'm just going to take us back to the deck to walk through a customer story that we've had as well. Thank you, Caroline, for demoing. So you can see my screen. I also wanted to share a customer story and use case of how they were able to use app governance and how that's helped them secure their organization. So BP is one of our design partners for app governance, and they've used app governance to manage the vast number of apps, of cloud apps that they have in their tenant. They capture 39 million activities daily with the hundreds and thousands of cloud apps that they have within their organization. And so app governance was able to help them quickly identify and monitor their high privileged apps, so apps that have high-level permissions that can provide access to a lot of data. And it also helped them focus on other key information. So in their use case, they had a lot of apps, like I said, 100,000 apps, hundreds of thousands of apps, which they were actually managing manually before they were using app governance. And so they wanted to automate threat detection, be able to quickly get insights at a glance, and see a full listing of all of their cloud apps. So app governance was able to provide a solution to BP that helped them manage their apps and provide cloud app tracking, regulation, and other monitoring capabilities. So because of app governance, they were able to quickly identify apps and disable apps that pose the biggest risks in their tenant. So you might be wondering, app governance has so much to offer. How can I get started? What can I do to try this out myself? You can sign up for a free trial of app governance. It's a 90-day free trial. We'll drop the link to sign up for the trial in the chat. Like I mentioned before, app governance is an add-on to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. And so you need to have a Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps license, which is included in E5 or A5, and also as a standalone license in order to use app governance. I'll also drop in documentation and other links in the chat as well, so that you can learn more. All right, I'll pass it back to Jacqueline. But thank you all. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. We really appreciate you speaking on today's webinar. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped to answer questions and is still helping to answer questions. And most of all, we definitely want to thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on this webinar. And we hope to see you next time. Thanks so much. Goodbye.